The collision of worlds. Darius Kapoor drummed his fingers impatiently against the steering wheel of his custom Aston Martin. The conference call running through his car's speakers had dragged on 20 minutes longer than scheduled, and now he was late for the board meeting at his company headquarters. As the founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, a multi-billion-dollar company that had revolutionized renewable energy storage, Darius wasn't accustomed to waiting for anyone or anything. "We'll continue this discussion tomorrow," he interrupted, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had become his trademark in Silicon Valley. "Send the revised projections to my office by morning." He ended the call and pressed down on the accelerator, feeling the powerful engine respond instantly. At 36, Darius had everything most people spent lifetimes chasing: wealth beyond measure, global recognition, and the power to make things happen with a single word. What he lacked, though he would never admit it, was time to breathe. The coastal highway stretched before him, a ribbon of asphalt winding between the Pacific Ocean and the rolling hills north of San Francisco. His mind was already in the boardroom, rehearsing the strategy he would present for Nexus's expansion into Southeast Asian markets. The sudden appearance of a truck swerving into his lane barely registered until it was almost too late. Darius yanked the wheel hard to the right, narrowly avoiding a collision. The Aston Martin fishtailed, spinning off the road and down the grassy embankment. For 3 terrifying seconds, the world tumbled around him before the car slammed to a halt against a sturdy oak tree. The airbag deployed with explosive force, leaving him dazed but conscious. Something warm trickled down his temple. Blood. The driver's door was crushed against the tree, and pain shot through his left leg when he tried to move. Smoke began curling from under the crumpled hood. "Perfect," he muttered through gritted teeth, fumbling for his phone. It had been launched somewhere during the crash. Struggling to remain calm, Darius realized with growing alarm that the smoke was thickening. Half a mile down the road, Farah Nolan had just finished her morning rounds at the Northern California Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. At 32, she had established herself as one of the most respected wildlife veterinarians on the West Coast, specializing in predator rehabilitation. Her work rarely followed a schedule, but today had begun peacefully enough, until she spotted the smoke rising from the hillside while driving back from releasing a rehabilitated red-tailed hawk. Without hesitation, Farah pulled over and grabbed the emergency kit she always kept in her weathered Jeep. As a veterinarian who often worked in remote locations, she was certified in wilderness first aid and had helped at accident scenes before. She scrambled down the embankment, her hiking boots finding purchase on the steep slope. The luxury car was a crumpled mess, smoke pouring from the engine compartment with alarming intensity. "Hello? Can you hear me?" she called, approaching the driver's side. Through the spider-webbed window, she saw a man struggling with his seatbelt, blood streaming down his face. Their eyes met, his filled with pain and frustration, hers steady and focused. "The door's jammed," he called back, his voice strained. "Cover your face," Farah instructed, pulling a rescue hammer from her pack. With practiced precision, she broke the passenger window, reached in to unlock the door and pulled it open. "We need to get you out now. That smoke isn't getting any better." Darius nodded, wincing as he tried to move his injured leg. "I'm a doctor, veterinarian," Farah explained quickly. "Let me help you. This might hurt." With surprising strength for her slender frame, she helped extract him from the wreckage, supporting his weight as they moved away from the vehicle. No sooner had they reached a safe distance than flames erupted from the engine compartment. "My phone," Darius began, looking back at the burning car. "Already on it," Farah replied, pulling out her own cell and dialing emergency services. She guided him to sit on a fallen log while quickly reporting their location and the situation. After ending the call, she knelt beside him, opening her first aid kit. "Hold still," she instructed, examining the gash on his forehead. Her touch was gentle but confident as she cleaned the wound and applied pressure to stop the bleeding. "I'm Farah, by the way," she said, working methodically. "Looks like you're having quite the morning, Mr. Kapoor." "Darius Kapoor," he replied, studying her face, framed by a loose braid of auburn hair. It was tanned from outdoor work, with a scattering of freckles across her nose and clear green eyes that assessed his injuries with professional detachment. "You're not what I expected to find on this highway." A small smile touched her lips. "And luxury sports cars aren't what I usually find wrapped around trees. But here we are." She moved to examine his leg, rolling up his torn designer pants with little regard for the expensive fabric. "Can you move your toes?" He complied, relieved when they responded. Good sign, she nodded. Probably not broken, but you'll need proper imaging. Ambulance should be here in about 15 minutes. As she applied a temporary bandage to his leg, Darius felt strangely disconnected from his normal life. Board meetings, acquisition deals, market projections, all seemed distant compared to the immediacy of this moment. A stranger calmly tending his wounds beside a burning luxury car worth more than most people earned in years. Thank you, he said finally, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Gratitude wasn't an emotion he expressed often. Farah glanced up, meeting his eyes directly. Don't thank me yet. You still have to explain to your insurance company why your very expensive car is now a very expensive bonfire. Despite everything, Darius found himself laughing, a genuine laugh that surprised them both. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder as emergency vehicles approached. Neither of them could have guessed that this chance encounter on a coastal highway would be the first chapter of a story that would transform them both in ways money could never buy and success could never measure. Unexpected Gratitude 3. Days after the accident, Farah was elbow-deep in a tub of soapy water, scrubbing algae from the artificial pond in the center's otter enclosure. The late morning sun beat down on her back as she worked, her mind focused on the task at hand rather than the paperwork waiting on her desk. Dr. Nolan, called Tomas, the center's college-aged volunteer. There's someone here to see you. Says it's important. Farah sighed, rinsing her arms. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. Wildlife rehabilitation centers weren't typically places that received unexpected visitors. Usually, it was either someone who'd found an injured animal or a scheduled donor tour. After quickly changing from her mud-splattered waders into slightly more presentable jeans and the center's logo polo shirt, she made her way to the reception area. She stopped short when she saw who was waiting. Darius Kapoor stood examining the donation plaque wall, looking both entirely out of place and strangely commanding in the humble surroundings. His tailored charcoal suit probably cost more than the center's monthly operating budget. A thin butterfly bandage crossed his temple where she'd seen blood flowing days before, and he leaned slightly on an elegant black cane. Mr. Kapoor, she said, surprised. I didn't expect to see you again. He turned, his expression unreadable. Dr. Nolan, I hope I'm not interrupting. Just some otter habitat maintenance. She gestured to her still damp hair. What brings you to our little corner of nowhere? Darius reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. I wanted to thank you properly for your assistance the other day. Farah accepted the envelope with hesitation, opening it to find a check with so many zeros her eyes widened involuntarily. This is excessive. It's appropriate, he countered. You saved my life, she handed the check back. I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept this. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true. His dark eyes studied her with the same intensity she'd seen in the predators she rehabilitated. Calculating, intelligent, and slightly dangerous. 3 cars passed without stopping before you arrived. Still, I don't need payment for basic human decency. She crossed her arms. Though if you're determined to express gratitude, our center always welcomes donations for animal care. Something shifted in his expression, surprise perhaps at being refused. Darius Kapoor wasn't a man accustomed to hearing no. Very well, he said after a moment. Consider it redirected to your facility. He glanced around at the modest reception area with its worn furniture and educational posters. Would you like a tour? Farah offered impulsively. See what your generosity will support? Darius checked his watch. A timepiece she suspected cost more than her annual salary, then nodded. I have 45 minutes before my next call. As they walked through the center, Farah found herself warming to the task of showing this urban billionaire her world. She led him past the songbird rehabilitation aviaries, the small mammal recovery rooms, and the raptor conditioning areas. To her surprise, Darius asked thoughtful questions, showing particular interest in the center's sustainable design elements. You mentioned you're a veterinarian, he said as they paused by the red fox enclosure, but you work exclusively with wildlife? Meaning is subjective, Darius remarked, but he was watching the fox with unexpected interest. This is Russet, Farah explained. Hit by a car 6 weeks ago. Spinal trauma, but he's recovering well. Should be releasable by spring. You name them? Even knowing you'll release them? Names help us track their care without reducing them to numbers. They're individuals with their own stories. She glanced at him, though we try not to anthropomorphize too much. They continued to the final area, where a large outdoor enclosure housed the center's most famous resident, a one-eyed mountain lion named Thunder. Poacher's bullet, Farah explained as the magnificent cat regarded them with his remaining amber eye. Too habituated for release now, so he's our educational ambassador. Darius stepped closer to the protective barrier. Incredible animal. They are. Apex predators are often misunderstood, feared for the very traits that make them essential to ecosystem balance. She found herself watching Darius's profile as he observed the mountain lion. Kind of like certain humans in the business world, I suppose. His mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. Are you comparing me to a predator, Dr. Nolan? If the designer shoe fits, she shrugged, unintimidated. Your reputation precedes you. Darius Kapoor, the man who revolutionized energy storage and devoured 3 competing startups last quarter alone. You've researched me. It wasn't a question. Google exists, Mr. Kapoor. After you left in the ambulance, I was curious about who I'd helped. She led him back toward the main building. Your company does impressive work with renewable technology. Contradicts the ruthless image somewhat. Business is business. Environmental benefits are a fortunate byproduct of good engineering. He paused at the entrance to her cluttered office. Though I find it interesting that someone who dedicates her life to saving wildlife would be so quick to judge human nature. Farah felt a flicker of embarrassment. Fair point. Professional hazard. I spend more time with animals than people these days. Perhaps that explains your unusual directness. His tone was neutral, but something in his eyes suggested amusement rather than offense. An alert chimed on his phone. My 45 minutes are up, he announced, checking the message. Thank you for the tour, Dr. Nolan. Thank you for the donation, Mr. Kapoor. She extended her hand and he took it. His grip was firm but not domineering, a businessman's calculated handshake. As he turned to leave, he paused. I'm hosting a fundraising gala for environmental innovation next Saturday at my home in Woodside. Your center's work would fit the theme. You should attend. Farah blinked, caught off guard. I don't really do galas. Besides, I'm on call weekends. Find coverage, he suggested, producing a business card and writing something on the back. 7 o'clock. The address is here. No obligation to socialize beyond your comfort level. She accepted the card, bemused by the unexpected invitation. Why? Professional curiosity. His expression gave nothing away. And perhaps I'd like to understand what drives someone to choose foxes and mountain lions over the considerable financial rewards of private practice. With that, he was gone, leaving behind the lingering scent of expensive cologne that seemed oddly out of place among the earthy smells of the wildlife center. Later that evening, as Farah finished her paperwork, she discovered that Darius's donation was 5 times larger than the check he'd initially offered her. Attached was a simple note. For Russet, Thunder, and the others yet to find their way to you. No strings attached. She sat back in her chair, turning his business card between her fingers. On the back, in precise handwriting, was not only an address but a phone number with a note. In case you need to verify this isn't a trap set by an apex predator. Despite herself, Farah smiled. Perhaps there was more to the notorious Darius Kapoor than business headlines suggested. The question was whether she was curious enough to step into his world to find out. From her enclosure, Thunder the mountain lion watched her with his single knowing eye, as if sensing her thoughts and finding them amusing. Predators, after all, recognized each other, even when one wore designer suits and the other preferred mud-splattered work clothes. Fine, she muttered to the mountain lion. I'll go, but only because his donation will fund your salmon treats for the next year. Thunder blinked slowly in what Farah chose to interpret as approval, though it could just as easily have been judgment. In either case, she had a week to figure out what one wore to a billionaire's environmental gala, when one's nicest outfit was a hiking dress from REI. Crossing boundaries. The estate sprawled across 30 acres of prime, woodside real estate, nestled among ancient redwoods that dwarfed even the impressive modernist mansion at its center. As her rideshare approached the illuminated entrance, Farah fought the urge to ask the driver to turn around. This is definitely not my scene, she murmured, smoothing the emerald silk dress she'd panic-purchased yesterday. The saleswoman had assured her it was understated elegance, but Farah felt like an imposter regardless. Security verified her name against the guest list, and she followed the stone pathway to the main entrance, where staff directed arrivals toward a vast terrace overlooking Silicon Valley's twinkling lights. Crystal glasses clinked, conversation hummed, and somewhere a string quartet played unobtrusive classical music. Farah accepted a champagne flute from a passing server, using it more as a prop than a beverage as she scanned the crowd. Tech executives, venture capitalists, and what appeared to be at least 2 minor celebrities mingled with practiced ease. No sign of her reluctant host. "You came." The voice behind her was instantly recognizable. She turned to find Darius watching her with an expression that might have been pleasant surprise. Without his cane, he moved with only the slightest hint of a limp, a testament to swift recovery or sheer willpower. "I came," she agreed, raising her glass slightly. "Though I'm questioning my judgment. That dress suggests otherwise." His gaze traveled briefly over the emerald silk before returning to her face. "It suits you, thanks." The saleswoman said green compliments, auburn hair, and projects confidence in unfamiliar social territories. She mimicked the boutique owner's affected tone. A genuine smile crossed his features. "And does it?" "Not even slightly," she admitted. "But I figured if I was stepping into the lion's den, I might as well look good doing it." More animal analogies, he noted, gesturing for her to follow him toward a quieter corner of the terrace. "Though I assure you my guests don't bite. At least not until the contracts are signed." The area he led her to offered a breathtaking view of his property, including what appeared to be an elaborate Japanese garden illuminated by soft lanterns. "Your home is beautiful," Farah said, meaning it despite her discomfort with such obvious displays of wealth. "It's a place to sleep between meetings," he replied dismissively, though something in his tone suggested this wasn't entirely true. "The gardens were my mother's design before she passed. I've maintained them." This unexpected glimpse of sentimentality caught Farah off guard. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by a silver-haired man in an impeccable tuxedo. "Darius, there you are. The Secretary of Energy is asking about the Singapore expansion." His gaze shifted to Farah with barely concealed curiosity. "Richard, meet Dr. Farah Nolan. She runs the Northern California Wildlife Rehabilitation Center." Darius made the introduction smoothly. "Farah, Richard Westfield, my CFO and oldest friend, though he'd deny the latter under oath." Richard's handshake was perfunctory. "Wildlife rehabilitation? Fascinating. I'll leave you to it, but the secretary, I can wait 5 minutes," Darius finished firmly. "I'll find him after I ensure Dr. Nolan meets the right people." After Richard departed with a barely concealed look of impatience, Farah raised an eyebrow. "I don't need a babysitter. You have important people to charm." "Everyone here is important by conventional metrics," Darius replied, "but few are interesting. You, Dr. Nolan, are both." Before she could process this unexpected compliment, he was guiding her through the crowd, introducing her to people whose connections could benefit her wildlife center, a conservation-minded venture capitalist, the director of a prestigious wildlife biology program, the head of a foundation that funded veterinary research. With each introduction, Farah found herself growing more comfortable, especially when the conversations turned to her work. Darius remained nearby, occasionally adding comments that revealed he'd retained surprising details from their brief tour. "You've done your homework," she noted during a momentary lull. "I prepare thoroughly for everything," he replied. "But I should warn you, my assistant tells me at least 3 journalists are circulating and they've noticed us talking." Farah frowned. "Why would that matter? Silicon Valley thrives on gossip. Mysterious redhead captivates reclusive tech billionaire would make an entertaining headline." His tone was light, but his eyes were watching for her reaction. "Hardly newsworthy," she scoffed. "Besides, I'd be described as woman who smells faintly of fox musk, captivates man who could buy a small country." He laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his usually guarded features. Several nearby heads turned in surprise as if witnessing a rare celestial event. "You really don't care about any of this, do you?" he asked, gesturing to the opulent surroundings. "The food's excellent and the view is spectacular," she acknowledged. "But no, wealth as performance art isn't particularly impressive to me. What you do with it might be. Before he could respond, Richard reappeared, this time with unmistakable urgency. Darius, I'm sorry, but the Singapore situation requires immediate attention. Darius's expression shifted instantly back to the controlled mask of a CEO. Excuse me, Farah, this may take some time. Go, she said. I'm perfectly capable of managing. Save the world, or at least your corner of it. With a brief nod, he followed Richard into the house, leaving Farah to wander the terrace alone. After a few more polite conversations, she found herself drawn to the illuminated garden paths below. Away from the crowd, she slipped off her uncomfortable heels and padded barefoot along the stone walkway, finding peace in the gentle sounds of flowing water and night insects. Escaping already? The voice startled her as she rounded a bend in the path. Darius sat on a stone bench beside a small koi pond, jacket removed and tie loosened. Just needed some air, she explained, suddenly conscious of her bare feet on the expensive stonework. Everything okay with Singapore? Nothing that can't be managed from 9,000 miles away by people I pay very well. He gestured to the space beside him. Join me? The fish are surprisingly good listeners, but terrible conversationalists. Farah hesitated, then sat, leaving a respectable distance between them. These gardens are incredible. My mother was Japanese. She created spaces like this wherever we lived. His voice softened. When I was young, before my father's business took off, our apartment had only a tiny balcony. She transformed it into a miniature version of this, just 3 bonsai trees and a bowl with a single koi. She said it was enough to remember that beauty exists in careful attention. Farah watched his profile in the lantern light. You miss her? Every day. He seemed surprised by his own candor. She was the compass my father and I both needed. After she died, he buried himself in work, and I followed his example and became wildly successful. By conventional metrics, he echoed his earlier words, now with a hint of something like regret. But success is a moving target, Dr. Nolan. Farah, she corrected gently. I think we've moved past titles, don't you? He nodded, turning to face her. What about you? Family. My father raised me after my mother left when I was 8. He was a park ranger, taught me everything about respecting wildlife. Died 5 years ago. She trailed her fingers in the cool water, watching the koi approach curiously. No siblings. Terrible at relationships. Married to my work, as they say. We have that in common then. Their eyes met briefly, and Farah felt an unexpected flutter of connection, not attraction, though that was undeniably present, but recognition. 2 solitary people, comfortable in their carefully constructed worlds, suddenly finding unexpected common ground. The moment stretched, then broke as Darius's phone chimed. He checked it with a frown. Singapore again. I should return. And I should probably call my ride, Farah said, standing and slipping her shoes back on. Thank you for the invitation. It was not what I expected. In a good way, I hope. He rose as well, retrieving his jacket from the bench. Undecided, she answered honestly. But not boring. He smiled. High praise indeed. After a brief hesitation, he added, I'd like to see your work in action sometime, beyond the sanitized tour version. Farah studied him, searching for ulterior motives and finding only what appeared to be genuine interest. We have a mountain lion release scheduled next week, a young male, rehabilitated after being orphaned last spring. It's at dawn several hours from here and requires hiking into remote territory. Sounds considerably more appealing than my board meeting, he replied. Send the details to my private email. It's on the card I gave you. As they walked back toward the house, maintaining a professional distance that nonetheless felt more comfortable than before, Farah wondered what she was doing. Darius Kapoor inhabited a world entirely different from hers, a world of private jets, billion-dollar decisions, and calculated relationships. Yet something about their conversation in the garden had revealed cracks in that carefully constructed image. Behind the wealth and power was a man shaped by loss, driven by forces perhaps not so different from her own. Dangerous thinking, she murmured to herself as they rejoined the party. What was that? Darius asked. Just remembering I need to check on a raccoon with a dangerous tendency to escape his enclosure, she improvised. Duty calls even at galas. He nodded, accepting the explanation. I'll walk you out. As her car arrived, Darius hesitated, then said, Thank you for coming tonight, Farah. Your presence made an otherwise predictable evening memorable. The garden was beautiful, she replied, suddenly uncertain how to navigate this moment. Thank you for sharing it. Mountain lions at dawn, he reminded her, opening the car door. I'll be there. As the car pulled away, Farah found herself wondering if he actually would be. More troublingly, she realized she hoped he would, and that realization unsettled her more than all the champagne and small talk combined. Back in her small apartment above the wildlife center, she changed into comfortable clothes and checked on her overnight patients. The raccoon, who really did have escape artist tendencies, chattered indignantly from his enclosure, as if demanding details about her evening. Don't start, she told him, offering a grape as a peace offering. It was just a networking opportunity. The raccoon's skeptical expression suggested he knew better, even if Farah herself wasn't ready to admit it. The breaking point, the eastern sky had barely begun its transition from black to deep purple when Farah spotted the unfamiliar vehicle at the trailhead. She'd half expected Darius to send regrets, citing unavoidable business commitments. Instead, he stood beside a rugged Range Rover, dressed in hiking attire that looked new but appropriately practical. You're here, she said, not bothering to hide her surprise as she parked beside him. I said I would be. He offered a travel mug. Coffee? My assistant assured me it's the good kind. Farah accepted gratefully. Thanks. It's another 2 miles to the release site. The transport team left earlier with Wilder. That's what we named the mountain lion. Lead the way, Darius replied, shouldering a small backpack. I assume there's a reason for the pre-dawn schedule? Large predators are crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk. She set a brisk pace up the forest trail. Plus, fewer hikers to complicate things. The hike proceeded mostly in silence, broken only by Farah's occasional comments about the ecosystem around them. Darius kept pace easily despite his recent injury, observing everything with quiet intensity. As they neared the release site, the trail narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. Farah glanced back to see Darius pausing to watch a hawk circling overhead, his expression one of genuine appreciation. Something about seeing the usually controlled businessman so present in this moment struck her unexpectedly. Almost there, she called softly. Remember what I told you. Stay behind the designated line, no sudden movements, and absolutely no flash photography. I left my paparazzi helicopter at home, he replied dryly. The release site was a natural clearing surrounded by dense forest, ideal territory for a young male mountain lion to establish his range. Dr. Jameson, the center's wildlife biologist, and 2 rangers from the State Conservation Department had already positioned the transport cage. The magnificent tawny cat paced restlessly inside, sensing freedom was near. Farah introduced Darius, simply as a major donor interested in our work, which seemed to satisfy the team. They took positions at the prescribed distance as Dr. Jameson prepared to open the cage remotely. This is the moment that makes everything worthwhile, Farah whispered to Darius as they stood shoulder to shoulder. When they returned to where they belong, the cage door lifted. For several breathless seconds, Wilder remained still, assessing his surroundings with primal caution. Then, in a fluid movement that embodied pure wild grace, he bolted from the cage and disappeared into the underbrush, offering only a fleeting glimpse of his tawny coat before the forest reclaimed him. Farah realized she was holding her breath only when Darius's hand lightly touched her shoulder. She turned to find him watching her rather than the vanished predator, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Thank you, he said quietly, for sharing this. The moment held between them charged with something neither was prepared to name, until Dr. Jameson's voice broke the spell. Transmitter signal is strong. He's moving southeast exactly as we hoped. The team began packing up equipment, their mission accomplished. Darius helped carry some of the lighter gear back down the trail, falling into easy conversation with Dr. Jameson about tracking technology. Farah found herself watching their interaction with a strange mix of emotions she couldn't quite identify. At the trailhead, as the others departed, Darius turned to her. "Have breakfast with me? There's a place in Mendocino that might still remember how I like my eggs." The invitation shouldn't have surprised her, yet it did. "I have rounds at the center. Delegate," he suggested. "Just this once." Perhaps it was the lingering magic of the release, or simple curiosity about this man who seemed increasingly complex with each encounter, but Farah found herself agreeing. The restaurant was a weathered building perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific. Despite the early hour, they were greeted by name and shown to a private table with a spectacular ocean view. "You come here often?" Farah asked, settling into her chair. "I have a house about 20 minutes north," Darius replied. "It's where I go when I need to think without distractions." "Another mansion with priceless artwork and a staff of 50? She teased. "A cabin with decent internet and no staff at all." His smile was self-deprecating. "Disappointing, I know." Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease as they shared a breakfast of locally sourced ingredients. Darius spoke of his company's newest research into biodegradable battery components, while Farah described the challenges of wildlife conservation in developing regions. "You should consider expanding your center's scope," he suggested as they lingered over coffee. "Your expertise could benefit conservation efforts internationally." "With what funding?" She laughed. "We operate on grants and donations as it is. Money can be arranged." His tone was casual, but his eyes were serious. "Your work matters, Farah. It should reach further." She set down her cup with deliberate care. "Is that what this is about? Finding another project to fund?" Something flickered across his features. Hurt, perhaps quickly masked. "No. This is about breakfast after watching a mountain lion return to the wild with someone who understands why that matters." "I'm sorry," she said, immediately regretting her defensiveness. "It's just, this is all a bit surreal. 3 weeks ago, you were a bleeding stranger in a wrecked sports car. Now you're offering to fund international expansion of my wildlife work over farm-to-table eggs. Life rarely follows predictable trajectories." He hesitated, then added, "I find myself thinking about you when I should be focusing on quarterly projections." The admission hung between them, honest and unadorned. Farah felt heat rise to her cheeks, unsure how to respond to his directness. "I should get back," she said finally. "Morning treatments," he nodded, accepting her retreat without pressing. As they walked to their vehicles, Darius asked, "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? In the city?" No shop talk, no funding discussions, just dinner. The invitation was exactly what she'd been both hoping for and dreading. "Darius, His phone interrupted with a shrill alert. Checking it, his expression darkened. "I need to take this. Give me a moment." He stepped away, his posture shifting instantly into the commanding CEO she'd first met. Even from a distance, the tension in his voice was evident as he spoke rapidly into the phone. When he returned, his face was a controlled mask. "I have to go. There's a situation with our Singapore facility." He hesitated. "About dinner?" "Go," she said, understanding the priorities of his world. "Handle your situation. We can talk later." With a brief nod, he was gone, leaving Farah standing alone in the parking lot, wondering if she'd just witnessed the inevitable collision of their incompatible worlds. Later that evening, as she finished her rounds at the center, her phone chimed with a news alert. The headline made her stomach drop. Nexus Technologies faces environmental scandal. CEO Darius Kapoor, accused of greenwashing, as Singapore facility linked to protected wetland destruction. The article detailed allegations that Nexus's new Singapore manufacturing facility had begun construction on land that local environmental groups claimed was protected wetland habitat. Anonymous sources suggested Darius had personally approved the location, despite knowing its ecological significance. Farah stared at her phone in disbelief. The man who had stood transfixed watching a mountain lion return to the wild that very morning was being accused of deliberately destroying critical habitat halfway around the world. Her phone rang. "Darius." After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "I assume you've seen the news?" His voice was tight with controlled frustration. "Is it true?" she asked simply. "It's complicated," he replied. "The land was rezoned last year. All the proper environmental assessments were conducted. That's not what I asked. Farah felt a cold disappointment settling in her chest. Did you know it was ecologically sensitive? His silence was answer enough. The preliminary reports flagged concerns, he finally admitted, but the government approved the development, and the economic benefits for the region are substantial. We're implementing mitigation measures. Mitigation, she repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. Like planting a few trees while paving over irreplaceable ecosystem, building pretty gardens while destroying natural ones? That's unfair. You don't understand the complexities. I understand perfectly, she cut in. This morning you watched a wild animal go free like it meant something to you. Tonight I discover you're eliminating wild spaces that countless animals depend on. Which is the real Darius Kapoor? Both, he answered after a pause. The world isn't black and white, Farah. Business requires compromises. Some compromises cost too much. She struggled to keep her voice steady. Not in dollars, but in things that can never be replaced. Let me explain properly. Not over the phone. His voice had an edge of desperation she'd never heard before. Come to my office tomorrow. I'll show you the full plans, the mitigation strategies. I don't think that's a good idea. The disappointment was crushing now. I mistook who you were, Darius. Or maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. Farah. Goodbye, she said quietly, ending the call before he could respond. She sat in her office for a long time afterward, Thunder, the one-eyed mountain lion, watching her silently from his enclosure. Eventually, she walked over to him, finding comfort in the presence of the magnificent predator who made no pretense about his nature. At least you're honest about who you are, she told him, receiving a slow blink in response. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Darius throughout the evening, but she left them unread. Whatever was developing between them had been built on shifting sand. Better to end it now before anyone got hurt worse. Yet as she finally drove home in the darkness, the memory of his expression at dawn, watching Wilder disappear into the forest, haunted her. There had been genuine wonder there, she was certain of it. How could the same man approve the destruction of wild places? The contradiction troubled her far into the night, leaving her wondering if perhaps there was more to the story, or if she had simply been foolish enough to believe a predator could change his nature, even for her. Rewritten destiny. For 2 weeks, Farah immersed herself in work, ignoring the messages that eventually stopped coming. The Wildlife Center provided ample distraction, a sudden influx of orphaned fox kits, an injured peregrine falcon requiring delicate surgery, and endless administrative tasks. If her colleagues noticed her subdued mood, they attributed it to exhaustion. Only Thunder, with his knowing amber eye, seemed to see through her practiced professionalism to the disappointment beneath. Stop judging me, she told the mountain lion one evening as she prepared his dinner. Not everyone can be as straightforward as you. The local news had moved on from the Singapore scandal, though Farah had seen enough to know the situation remained unresolved. Environmental groups continued their protests, while Nexus Technologies issued carefully worded statements about their commitment to sustainability. It was Dr. Jameson who finally broke through her determined isolation, dropping a tablet on her desk one rainy morning. You should see this, he said without preamble. The screen displayed a press release. Nexus Technologies announces relocation of Singapore facility, creation of permanent wildlife sanctuary on original site. The accompanying photo showed Darius at a podium, flanked by environmental officials and local conservation leaders. Thought you might be interested given your recent friendship with Mr. Kapoor, Dr. Jameson added with pointed emphasis. Farah scanned the article, her heart racing. According to the release, Nexus had purchased additional land adjacent to the controversial site, creating a conservation area 3 times larger than the original wetlands. The manufacturing facility would be relocated to an already developed industrial zone, despite significant financial penalties for breaking the original contract. The cost of doing business must never include irreversible environmental damage, Darius was quoted saying. Nexus Technologies is committed to leading by example in corporate environmental responsibility. Interesting timing, Dr. Jameson remarked casually. Almost like someone might have said something to change his mind. After he left, Farah sat motionless, rereading the article. The decision would cost Nexus millions, delay their expansion by months, and undoubtedly face pushback from shareholders. It was the kind of bold, principled move that corporate leaders rarely made, especially not for ecological concerns. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Turn on the local news. Channel 7. Now. Curious, she pulled up the live stream on her computer just in time to see Darius walking up to a podium at what appeared to be the entrance to her wildlife center. "What the hell?" she whispered. The camera panned to show a small crowd gathered, including several recognizable tech executives and environmental leaders. Behind them stood a sleek new building adjacent to the center's existing facilities. Today marks the official opening of the Northern California Wildlife Research and Education Center, Darius announced. This state-of-the-art facility will support the groundbreaking conservation work already happening here, while expanding public education and global research initiatives. The camera cut to a ribbon-cutting ceremony, then back to Darius. This partnership represents Nexus Technologies' commitment to supporting local conservation efforts. While Dr. Nolan, the center's director, couldn't be with us today, her vision guided every aspect of this project. Farah stared at the screen in disbelief. The building, her building apparently, was a beautiful structure of reclaimed wood and glass that blended harmoniously with the natural surroundings. According to the reporter's voiceover, it included research laboratories, rehabilitation spaces with advanced monitoring technology, and public education areas. She was still trying to process this when her office door opened. Darius stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and determination. "You should have consulted me," she said finally, gesturing toward her computer screen where the news segment was still playing. "Would you have agreed?" he countered, remaining at the threshold as if unsure of his welcome. "Probably not." Hence the approach. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The center owns the building outright. No strings attached, no Nexus branding, no corporate control. The endowment will cover operating costs and additional staff for the next 20 years. Farah struggled to maintain her composure. "Why?" "Multiple reasons." He moved closer, his voice softer now. "Because the work you do matters. Because influence should be used for something beyond profit margins. Because watching that mountain lion walk free changed something in me." He paused. "And because I couldn't bear the thought of you believing I was exactly the person you accused me of being. The Singapore facility is being relocated at considerable expense," he finished. "You were right. Some compromises cost too much." The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tighten. "You could have just sent flowers like a normal person." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I've never been accused of being normal." "So what happens now?" she asked, suddenly aware of how close he stood. "You've built me a multi-million-dollar facility and created a wildlife sanctuary halfway around the world. That's a lot to process. Now," he said carefully, "I ask if you'll have dinner with me, not as a donor or a CEO or whatever labels we've been hiding behind. Just as Darius asking Farah if she might be willing to explore whatever this is between us." The directness of his request disarmed her last defenses. "You upended your business plans and built an entire research center, but you're nervous about asking me to dinner?" "Terrified," he admitted. "Business decisions are logical. This isn't." Farah found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. "I finish rounds at 7. Nothing fancy, I won't have time to change." Relief washed over his features. "I know a place that doesn't mind hiking boots. One condition," she added, suddenly serious. "No more grand gestures without talking to me first. Partnerships require communication, whether business or whatever this might become." "Agreed." He extended his hand formally as if sealing a deal. "Though I should warn you, the research center was already under construction before our disagreement. That was going to be my surprise after the mountain lion release." She shook her head in amazement. "You are impossible." "I prefer determined," he replied, the warmth in his eyes belying his businesslike tone. Before she could respond, an urgent knock interrupted them. Thomas burst in without waiting for an answer. "Dr. Nolan," the Wildlife Service just called. "They've located a wounded juvenile bald eagle about 30 miles north. They need someone with raptor experience immediately." Farah was already reaching for her field kit.
"Tell them I'm on my way."
"Prep the raptor critical care unit." She turned apologetically to Darius. "I have to go," he said, understanding immediately. "Dinner will wait." She hesitated only briefly before asking, "Want to come along?" It won't be comfortable, and there's a good chance you'll end up covered in mud or worse. His response was to reach for her heavy-duty first aid kit. Lead the way, doctor. As they hurried to her Jeep, Farah realized she'd just invited a billionaire CEO to help rescue a wounded eagle on a moment's notice. And he hadn't hesitated. Whatever was developing between them defied conventional categories, crossing boundaries neither had expected to traverse. 4 hours later, soaked from an unexpected rainstorm and exhausted from the delicate work of stabilizing the injured eagle, they sat in her Jeep in companionable silence. The magnificent bird was safely sedated in a transport container in the back, its broken wing immobilized and its future now considerably brighter, thanks to their intervention. "You were good back there," Farah said as she navigated the muddy forest road. "Not many people can hold a position for 20 minutes without moving while someone else works on an apex predator." High praise from Dr. Nolan. Darius glanced at her, his usual polished appearance completely undone by mud, rain, and exertion. Somehow he seemed more himself this way, though I suspect this wasn't quite what my board had in mind when I said I was pursuing new investment opportunities. "Is that what I am? An investment opportunity?" she asked, but her tone was light, teasing. He considered this as they emerged from the forest onto the main highway. "No," he said finally. "You're the unexpected variable that changed the equation entirely." "Very romantic, Mr. Kapoor. Do you sweet-talk all your acquaintances with mathematical metaphors?" "Only the ones who pull me from burning vehicles and then proceed to completely upend my worldview." He reached over hesitantly, covering her hand on the gear shift with his own. "For what it's worth, I've never worked this hard to impress someone, and I once negotiated with 3 world leaders in the same day." Farah laughed, turning her hand to intertwine her fingers with his. "For what it's worth, I'm impressed. Not by the building or the sanctuary, though those are incredible, but by your willingness to reconsider, to change course when it mattered." They arrived back at the center as twilight settled over the hills. After transferring the eagle to the medical facility and ensuring it was stable, they found themselves standing in the soft glow of the security lights, neither quite ready to end the day. "Rain check on dinner?" Darius asked. "You look like you might fall asleep before the appetizers arrive." "Probably," she admitted, "but I wouldn't mind coffee on my porch. It's nothing fancy, just a small apartment above the old administrative building, but the view of the stars is unbeatable." His smile was answer enough. Later, as they sat on her modest porch with steaming mugs watching the fog roll in over the hills, Darius broke the comfortable silence. "I've been thinking about what you said, about partnerships requiring communication." He turned to face her directly. "I'd like to propose one." Farah raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Nexus has the resources to support conservation initiatives globally, but lacks the ecological expertise to identify what truly matters. Your center has the knowledge but limited reach. He leaned forward, enthusiasm animating his features. "What if we created a foundation together? Independent from both organizations but drawing strength from both?" The idea sparked her imagination immediately. A fund that could respond quickly to ecological emergencies worldwide. Supporting indigenous conservation efforts. Funding research in neglected ecosystems, he continued, catching her vision. Training local wildlife experts in developing regions, she added, mind racing with possibilities. "See, this is why I need you." The words escaped before he could temper them, hanging in the night air between them. Farah set down her mug, studying his face in the dim light. "Is that the only reason?" Darius hesitated, then shook his head. "You know it isn't." He reached for her hand, his touch tentative despite his usual confidence. "The foundation is a good idea, but even if you rejected it entirely, I'd still be sitting here hoping for the chance to know you better. Even though I called you an environmental hypocrite and ignored your messages for 2 weeks?" she asked, though her fingers tightened around his. "Even then." His smile held a vulnerability she'd never seen before, though I'd prefer if that particular pattern didn't continue. Farah found herself moving closer, drawn by the honesty in his eyes. "I can probably arrange that." When their lips finally met, it felt less like a first kiss and more like a continuation of a conversation they'd been having since that day on the highway. Challenging, honest and unexpectedly right, they separated slowly, and Farah couldn't help but laugh softly. This is not how I expected things to go when I pulled you from that car. Disappointed? He asked, his arms settling comfortably around her shoulders. She leaned against him, watching as the stars appeared one by one above the rolling hills. No surprise, definitely, but not disappointed. In the distance, they heard Thunder's distinctive call, neither a roar nor a growl, but something uniquely his own. It echoed across the sanctuary, a reminder of the wild heart that beat beneath all human constructs. He approves, Farah murmured. Important endorsement, Darius replied, though I suspect winning over a one-eyed mountain lion might be easier than navigating whatever comes next. She turned to face him, suddenly serious. This won't be simple, you know. Our worlds are fundamentally different. I'm counting on it. His expression was equally earnest. My world could use more of your perspective, and perhaps occasionally you might benefit from some of mine. A partnership of equals, she said, testing the concept. Nothing less would work for either of us. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers. Predators recognize their own kind, after all. Farah smiled at the callback to her earlier analogy. Apex predators are essential to ecosystem balance. Exactly. He pulled her closer as the night air cooled. And sometimes they find they're stronger together than apart. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the mist settle over the wildlife sanctuary, Farah reflected on the strange path that had led them here. A chance encounter, an act of kindness, worlds colliding and changing each other in the process. Whatever came next, foundation plans, conservation battles, the inevitable clash of their different approaches to life. She knew with surprising certainty that it would be worth the journey. Not because Darius had built her a research center or created a wildlife sanctuary halfway around the world, but because he had been willing to see the world through her eyes, even when it challenged everything he thought he knew. In the end, that was the most valuable thing anyone could offer, the willingness to grow, to change, to become more than they had been before. It was what she asked of herself every day in her work with wounded creatures. Why should human relationships be any different? From his enclosure, thunder called once more into the night, a sound that seemed to carry both warning and welcome. Farah smiled, understanding the sentiment perfectly. Some journeys were worth the risk even when the path ahead remained uncharted. Especially then,